My name is Jode Mendez. I'm 31 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. The badge in my hand felt heavy, even though it was just a cheap piece of plastic. I read the words printed in bold black ink. Jode Housekeeper. I stood there in my evening gown, surrounded by the smell of expensive lilies and champagne. It was my sister-in-law's engagement party, the event of the year. My mother-in-law, Cora, stood in front of me at the head table. She didn't look ashamed. She looked triumphant. She pointed a manicured finger at the gap between two chairs. There was a place setting, but no chair for me. "No seat for you, dear," she announced, her voice cutting through the chatter of 300 guests. "This table is for family only." I turned to Lucas, my husband, the man whose company I had secretly saved from ruin, the man I loved. I waited for him to stand up. I waited for him to tell his mother she was cruel. Instead, he covered his mouth and laughed. That sound shattered me. It was the sound of my marriage breaking. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My hands were steady as I slid my wedding ring off my finger. The metal made a soft clink as I set it down on the white tablecloth. "Then I'm no longer yours," I said, and I walked away. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Jode Mendez. I'm 31 years old. I wasn't born into silk sheets and silver spoons like the Hawthorne family. My story didn't start in a mansion on a hill in Denver. It started in a trailer in Pueblo, with a roof that leaked every time the snow melted and a fridge that was empty more often than it was full. My name is Jode. And before I was the woman standing in a silk gown holding a housekeeper's badge, I was just the girl who learned how to fix things because broken things were all I had. My father left before I could walk. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. I learned early that complaining didn't put food on the table. Action did. Strategy did. While other kids were playing video games, I was balancing my mother's checkbook at the kitchen table, figuring out which bill we could pay late without getting the power cut. I learned the language of survival. I didn't go to Ivy League schools. I went to the state university on a full scholarship that I fought tooth and nail for. I studied business because I wanted to understand the invisible rules that made some people rich and kept people like me poor. I had a knack for it. I could look at a mess of numbers and see a story. I could see where money was leaking, where people were lying, and how to plug the holes. By the time I was 26, I had built my own company, Nexus Advisory. It wasn't flashy. I didn't have a skyscraper downtown. I worked out of a small, clean office in Lodo. My specialty was crisis management for businesses. When a company was bleeding cash and about to die, they called me. I was the surgeon. I came in, I cut out the rot, I stitched them back up, and I made them profitable again. I was good at being invisible. I liked it that way. I liked being the person behind the curtain who pulled the levers. Then I met Lucas Hawthorne. He was everything I wasn't. He was tall, charming, and had that easy, careless laugh of someone who has never worried about next month's rent. We met at a coffee shop where I was working on a client's audit. He spilled his latte on my laptop case, thankfully, not the computer itself, and insisted on buying me dinner as an apology. He was dazzling. He told me I was intense, but he said it like it was a compliment. He said he loved that I was self-made. He told me his family was suffocating, full of expectations and rigid rules, and that I was a breath of fresh air. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I had spent my whole life fighting to survive, and Lucas felt like a soft place to land. We got married 2 years later. I thought I was marrying into a family. I didn't realize I was marrying into a hierarchy. Lucas's parents, Cora and Richard Hawthorne, were polite to me in the beginning, but it was a cold, sharp politeness. The kind that reminds you of your place. They asked me questions about Pueblo like I was from a different planet. "Did you really not have a dishwasher growing up?" Cora asked me once at Easter brunch, her voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. "How quaint. It must make you appreciate all this so much more." I just smiled and nodded. I wanted them to like me. I wanted to belong. The trouble started 18 months ago. Lucas worked for the family business, Hawthorne Manufacturing. It was a legacy company, making high-end parts for machinery. But legacy doesn't pay the bills if you don't adapt. I noticed Lucas looking pale and sick in the evenings. He wasn't sleeping. Finally, I cornered him in our kitchen. "What is it?" I asked. "Tell me." He broke down. He told me the company was hemorrhaging money. They had lost 3 major contracts. They were months away from bankruptcy. Richard, his father, was in denial. Cora was still spending money like water. If we go under, Lucas sobbed into his hands, I lose everything. My inheritance, my status, my job. My parents will die of shame, Jode. You have to help us. He looked at me with those desperate, wet eyes. He looked like a little boy. I can help, I said quietly, but I need access. I need to see the books. He brought me everything, and it was a disaster. It was worse than he said. They were bleeding out. For the next year and a half, I worked 2 jobs. By day, I ran Nexus Advisory, keeping my own clients happy. By night, and every weekend, I worked on Hawthorne Manufacturing. I didn't tell Richard or Cora. Lucas begged me not to. My dad has too much pride, he said. If he knows his son's wife from Pueblo, is fixing his mistakes, he'll never forgive me. Let me present the ideas. Please, Jode. For us? So I became the ghost. I rewrote their entire supply chain strategy. I negotiated with vendors who were threatening to sue. I found a tax loophole that saved them $40,000 in the first month alone. I streamlined their production line, cutting waste by 20%. I worked until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. I missed my own birthdays. I skipped vacations. I saved them. I pulled that company back from the edge of the cliff, inch by inch. I saved 200 jobs. There were 200 families who kept their health insurance and their paychecks because I stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing Richard Hawthorne's mess. And when the quarterly meeting came, the one where the company was declared officially safe and profitable again, I wasn't there. I was at home, exhausted, waiting for Lucas to come back and celebrate with me. He came home beaming. He popped a bottle of champagne Dom Perignon, $300 a bottle. They loved it, he shouted. Dad said I'm a genius. He said I finally stepped up. He's talking about making me CEO next year. I smiled, taking the glass he handed me. That's great, Lucas. Did you mention the work I did on the vendor contracts? He paused, his smile flickering just for a second. Well, not specifically, babe. It would have complicated things. You know how Dad is. But I know. We know that's what matters, right? Right, I said. But the champagne tasted sour. I looked at him, so happy in his suit that I had picked out, drinking wine paid for by the bonus I had effectively earned for him. I felt a small, cold knot form in my stomach. He hadn't just omitted my name. He had erased me. But I told myself it was okay. That's what marriage is, right? A partnership. Sometimes one carries the other. I was strong. I could carry him. I didn't need the applause. I just needed his love. I didn't know then that I was feeding a beast that would eventually eat me alive. I didn't know that by making myself small so he could feel big, I was teaching him that I didn't matter at all. The success of the manufacturing company didn't bring us closer. It pushed us apart. Or rather, it pushed me down. Once the danger was over, the dynamic shifted. Lucas didn't need me to save him anymore, so he went back to treating me like an accessory. Actually, it was worse than that. He started treating me like a liability. It started with small comments. Little digs that were wrapped in a smile, so if I got upset, I was the one being sensitive. One evening, we were getting ready for a dinner at his parents' house. I was wearing a blazer and trousers because I had come straight from a meeting with a new client for Nexus. My business was booming. I had just signed a contract with a tech startup in Boulder. I was proud. Lucas looked at me in the mirror as he adjusted his tie. You're wearing that. I didn't have time to change, I said. I had a huge meeting. We closed the deal with Tech One. That's nice, babe, he said, dismissing it instantly. But maybe you could put on a dress. Mother likes it when you look softer. You know how she feels about your little side gig. She thinks it makes you look hard. I froze. My little side gig, Nexus Advisory, was billing 7 figures a year. I had 5 employees. I had just saved his family's legacy. You know what I mean, he said, laughing nervously. It's just intense. You don't need to work so hard anymore. The family is doing well. My bonus is coming in. You could relax, take up tennis or something. He wanted me to be a housewife. He wanted the fix-it girl from Pueblo to go back in the box now that the leak was plugged. I didn't change my clothes that night. But at dinner, Cora made sure to mention it. Jode always looks so professional, she said, sniffing as she cut her steak. Like she's ready to file my taxes. It must be exhausting, dear, trying to keep up with that little business of yours. It's not a little business, Cora, I said, keeping my voice steady. I have legitimate corporate clients. Of course you do, Richard said, not looking up from his plate. Lucas was telling us how he's reorganizing the logistics department. Brilliant ideas, son. Really top-tier thinking. I looked at Lucas. The logistics reorganization? That was my plan. I had drawn the diagrams on our kitchen island while he played video games 3 weeks ago. Lucas didn't look at me. He just soaked up the praise. Thanks, Dad, it just came to me. It just came to him, I repeated in my head. The pattern continued for months. It was a slow drip of poison. They went on vacations that I planned but wasn't invited to. It's a Hawthorne retreat, Lucas told me. Just parents and kids, siblings only, you understand, right? We need to bond. I stayed home and worked. They bought new cars. Lucas bought a Porsche. Cora bought a new Mercedes. I knew exactly where that money came from. It came from the cash flow I had freed up. They were driving around in my hard work, while I drove my 5-year-old sedan because I was reinvesting my profits into my business. I started to feel like a ghost in my own life. I was the engine keeping the car running, but they wouldn't even let me sit in the passenger seat. But the worst moment, the moment the cracks in my heart turned into a shatter, happened 2 weeks before the engagement party. I was at the country club where the Hawthorns were members. I wasn't a member, of course. I was there as Lucas's guest. I had gone to the ladies' room and was walking back toward the patio where they were having drinks. The patio was screened by a tall hedge. I could hear them, but they couldn't see me. She's just so heavy, Lucas was saying. His voice was slurred. He was drunk. She's always so serious. Look at the budget, Lucas. Don't buy that watch, Lucas. It's like living with an accountant. She's useful, though, Richard said. His voice was cold and pragmatic. She keeps you grounded. Useful, Lucas scoffed. A hammer is useful. Doesn't mean I want to take it to bed. The other men at the table laughed. Zuri's engagement party is coming up, Cora said. Make sure she doesn't wear something tacky. Last Christmas she wore that red thing. She looked like a saloon girl. Don't worry, Lucas said. I'm handling her. Honestly, I don't even know if she fits in anymore, now that the company is safe. I mean, do I really need someone like that hanging around? She's embarrassing. She doesn't know how to act in our world. She tries, but you can't wash the Pueblo off her. My blood ran cold. You can't wash the Pueblo off her. I stood there behind the hedge, my hand gripping the rough leaves until they cut into my palm. He wasn't just ungrateful. He was ashamed of me. He had used my brain, my grit, and my Pueblo survival skills to save his inheritance. And now that he was safe, he looked down on the very tools that had saved him. I didn't walk out onto the patio. I turned around and walked back to the car. I sat in the parking lot for an hour, staring at the steering wheel. I didn't cry. The time for crying was over. That was the moment the victim died, and the strategist woke up. If they thought I was just a useful tool, I would show them exactly how a tool works. A tool can build, yes, but a hammer can also demolish. I went home that night and I didn't say a word to Lucas. When he came home later, smelling of bourbon and cigars, I pretended to be asleep. The next morning I went to work, but not for Nexus. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure server I had set up for Hawthorne Manufacturing. When I was saving the company, I had created a backdoor for myself so I could access the accounts remotely to fix their messes at 2 a.m. Lucas knew about it. He had probably forgotten. He wasn't a detail guy. I started digging. I wasn't looking for ways to save money anymore. I was looking for where it had gone. It didn't take long. When you know how to build a house, you know exactly where the weak beams are. I found the fraud almost immediately. It was clumsy. Lucas had gotten arrogant. He was skimming. Since the company had become profitable again, thanks to me, he had been diverting funds. He had set up a shell company called LJH Consulting. He was billing Hawthorne Manufacturing for consulting services that never happened. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. It added up to over $200,000 in the last 6 months, and his parents, they were doing it too. Richard was charging personal vacations to the company expense account. The business trip to Italy, pure vacation. The renovation on their lake house, billed as warehouse repairs. It was tax fraud. It was embezzlement. It was investor fraud because they had outside investors who saw falsified reports. I downloaded everything. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoices from the fake shell company. I traced the IP addresses. I matched the dates of the withdrawals to the dates of Lucas's new purchases. I took screenshots. I compiled spreadsheets. I created a digital paper trail that was so clear, a first-year law student could send them to prison with it. But I didn't stop there. If I was going to leave, I needed to know everything. I looked at Lucas's personal credit card statements. The ones he thought I couldn't see. I saw the hotel charges, The Ritz-Carlton in downtown Denver. Thursday nights. I checked his calendar. Thursday nights were when he had late strategy meetings. I saw the charges for jewelry. A diamond bracelet from Tiffany's. I checked my wrist. I didn't have a diamond bracelet. I saw the florist bills. To Sarah, I sat in my home office, the glow of the monitor lighting up my face. The room was silent. I felt a strange, cold calm settling over me. It wasn't rage. Rage is hot. This was ice. I had loved this man. I had sacrificed my own well-being to save him. I had let his family belittle me because I thought we were a team. And all this time, he was stealing from the company I saved to buy gifts for a woman named Sarah. I created a master folder on an encrypted drive. I named it Insurance. I put the fraud files in there. I put the embezzlement evidence in there. I put the proof of the affair in there. I backed it up to the cloud. I put a copy on a USB drive and put it in my safe deposit box at the bank. I looked at the folder icon on my desktop. It looked so small, just a little blue folder. But inside, it held the power to burn their entire world to the ground. I realized then that I had been playing the wrong game. I had been playing the good wife. I had been playing the savior. Lucas and his family didn't respect goodness. They respected power. They respected leverage. And for the first time in our marriage, I had all the leverage. I closed the laptop. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. I watched the steam rise. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Okay. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to confront him and let him gaslight me. I knew how Lucas operated. If I confronted him, he would cry. He would blame the stress. He would blame his parents. He would promise to change. He would charm me, just like he did in that coffee shop. And I would probably believe him because part of me still wanted to be loved. So I couldn't give him the chance to speak. I had to wait for the right moment. I had to wait until the stage was set. And then, the invitation for Zuri's engagement party arrived. The week leading up to the party was a blur of preparation. The Hawthorns were obsessed with appearances. This engagement party for Zuri, Lucas's younger sister, was going to be the social event of the season. Zuri was the only one in the family I somewhat tolerated. She was younger, flighty, and self-absorbed, but she wasn't cruel like Cora. She was just oblivious. She treated me like a hired assistant, asking me to help with favors and seating charts, but at least she smiled when she did it. I helped her. I ordered the flowers because she forgot. I coordinated with the caterer because Cora was too busy getting Botox. I was still fixing things. Old habits die hard. The night before the party, Lucas came home late. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book. I wasn't really reading. I was waiting. He walked in, tossing his keys on the entry table. Hey, he said, sounding tired. Long day. Dad is writing me about the quarterly projections. He walked over to kiss me on the forehead. He leaned down and the smell hit me. It wasn't subtle. It was a heavy, floral perfume. Jasmine and musk. I don't wear perfume. I'm allergic to heavy scents. He smelled like her. He smelled like Sarah. He pulled back and smiled at me, clueless. He didn't even care enough to shower. He didn't even care enough to hide it. That's how little he respected me. He thought I was too stupid to notice or too weak to do anything about it. You okay? He asked. You look tired. I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded normal. It scared me how normal I sounded. Good, he said. He loosened his tie. Listen, about tomorrow, the party. Yes, Mom was talking about the dress code. She wants everything to be perfect. You know how important this is for Zuri. The mayor is coming. The investors are coming. I have a dress, I said. The navy blue silk one. He wrinkled his nose. Yeah, that one is. It's fine, but try to keep it low-key, okay? Don't wear the big jewelry. Mom doesn't want you to, you know. Clash with the family. We want a cohesive look. Cohesive, I repeated. Yeah, just blend in, okay? Don't draw attention to yourself. You're great at that, being in the background. He patted my shoulder, like I was a dog. Like I was a good, obedient golden retriever. I'm going to bed, he said. I'm beat. He walked up the stairs. I sat there in the silence. Blend in. Don't draw attention. You're great at being in the background. He was telling me to disappear. He was telling me that my only value was in my invisibility. I looked at the stairs where he had just disappeared. I thought about the perfume on his collar. I thought about the housekeeper, comments his mother made. I thought about the fraudulent numbers on my laptop. I realized something in that moment. I had spent my entire life trying to prove I was worthy of sitting at their table. I had worked, saved, fixed, and bled to earn a seat. But the price of the seat was my soul. The price of the seat was accepting that I would always be less than. That I would be the help, the fixer, the doormat. If I stayed, I would disappear completely. The Jode from Pueblo, the fighter, the survivor would be gone. And all that would be left was this shell of a woman, grateful for scraps, ignoring the smell of another woman on her husband's skin. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the Denver skyline. No, I said. I wasn't going to blend in tomorrow. I wasn't going to wear the modest navy dress. I went to my closet. I pushed aside the sensible clothes Lucas liked. Way in the back, there was a dress I had bought for myself years ago before I met him. A dress I never wore because he said it was too much. It was emerald green. It was bold. It was cut to fit a woman who wasn't afraid to be seen. I pulled it out. Then I went to my laptop. I opened the insurance folder. I didn't send the emails yet. That would be too easy. That would be messy. I needed to be precise. I sent a text to my assistant at Nexus. Her name was Tara. She was young, hungry, and fiercely loyal. Tara, be ready tomorrow night. 9 p.m. I'm going to give you the signal code, execute. When you get that text, release the files to the SEC and the board of directors. Do not hesitate. Tara replied instantly. On standby, boss, you okay? I will be, I typed back. I went upstairs. I brushed my teeth. I put on my pajamas. I climbed into bed next to Lucas. He was snoring softly. He looked so peaceful. He had no idea that he was sleeping next to his executioner. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the party. I visualized the moment. They wanted me to be a housekeeper. Fine, I would clean house. The venue was a sprawling estate in Cherry Creek, rented for the night. It was a castle of stone and glass, lit up like a beacon. Valets in white jackets were running back and forth, parking Bentleys and Porsches. I drove myself. Lucas had gone earlier to help set up, which I knew meant he was drinking scotch with his father and probably texting Sarah. I parked my own car. I stepped out into the cool night air. I was wearing the emerald dress. It hugged my body. It was bold. It was loud. It was everything they hated. I had my hair down, loose and wavy, not the tight, severe bun Cora always insisted on. I wore gold heels. I walked up the stone steps. My heart was pounding, not with fear but with adrenaline. It was the feeling you get right before you jump off a cliff. The entrance hall was crowded. Waiters were passing champagne. A string quartet was playing something soft and classical in the corner. I saw Cora immediately. She was wearing silver, standing near the entrance, greeting guests like royalty. She saw me, and her smile faltered. Her eyes scanned my dress, widening with disapproval. Jode, she said, her voice tight. You're late in that dress, it's very bright. Hello, Cora, I said. I didn't apologize. Well, go find your name tag, she said, waving a hand toward a long table covered in white linen. Lucas is inside with the investors. Try not to disturb him. I walked to the table. There were hundreds of badges arranged in alphabetical order. Calligraphy on heavy cardstock. Dr. Harrison, Senator Miller, CEO Richard Hawthorne. I found mine. It wasn't calligraphy. It was printed on a standard office label maker, stuck onto a cheap plastic holder. Jode, housekeeper. I stared at it. The world seemed to slow down. It wasn't a mistake. It was a statement. It was a joke. An inside joke between Cora, Richard, and Lucas. They were telling me, in front of 300 of Denver's elite, exactly who I was to them. I was the help. I was the one who cleaned up their messes. I looked up. I saw Lucas standing by the bar. He was laughing, holding a drink. He saw me holding the badge. He nudged his father. They both looked at me and smirked. Lucas raised his glass to me, a mock toast. Relax, Jode, take a joke. I didn't pin the badge on. I held it in my hand like a weapon. I walked into the main ballroom. The dinner chimes rang. People started moving toward the tables. I walked to the head table, the family table. There were place cards. Richard, Cora, Lucas, Zuri's fiancé. I walked around the table. I looked for my name. There was a gap between Lucas and Zuri. There was a plate, there was silverware, but there was no chair. The music stopped. The room went quiet as people found their seats. I was the only one standing. Cora swept in, taking her seat at the center. She looked up at me, feigning surprise. Oh, Jode, she said loudly. Her voice carried to the back of the room. I'm so sorry, dear. We had a last-minute adjustment with the senator's seating. We simply ran out of room at the main table. She gestured vaguely toward the back of the room, near the kitchen doors. No seat for you here, dear, she said, smiling that ice-cold smile. Family only. The room was silent. 300 people were watching. I looked at Lucas, my husband. Lucas, I said, it was a question. Are you going to let this happen? Lucas looked at his mother, then at me. He looked at the badge in my hand. He looked at the missing chair. And then he chuckled. Come on, Jode, he said. Don't make a scene. Just grab a plate and find a spot. Food's for family, but we can make an exception. He laughed. The people at the nearby tables laughed nervously, following his lead. That was it. The final tether snapped. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the weakness in his jaw, the cruelty in his eyes, the fear behind his arrogance. He was a small, small man, and I had made myself tiny just to fit inside his world. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I took a breath. The air tasted sweet. You're right, Cora, I said. My voice was calm, steady, and clear. It cut through the silence. This table is for family. I looked at Lucas. And I don't belong here. I lifted my left hand. I took hold of my wedding ring. It was a platinum band with a diamond I had helped pick out. I slid it off my finger. I placed it gently on the empty white plate where my dinner should have been. It made a sharp clink against the china. Then I'm no longer yours, I said to Lucas. Lucas stopped laughing. His face went slack. Jode, what are you doing? Sit down. No, I said. I'm done sitting, I'm done fixing, and I'm done with you. I turned to Cora. I held up the plastic badge. You got the title wrong, I said. It shouldn't say housekeeper. I dropped the badge onto the table next to the ring. It should say the owner. I turned around. The train of my emerald dress swept across the floor. Jode, Lucas shouted, standing up. Jode, get back here, you're embarrassing me. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked down the center aisle of the ballroom. I walked past the senators, the CEOs, the socialites. I walked with my head high. I could hear the whispers starting. I could feel the shock in the room. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was walking on solid ground. I pushed open the heavy double doors and walked out into the night. I didn't go home. Home wasn't home anymore. It was just a house filled with lies. I drove to a lookout point up on Lookout Mountain. It was dark and quiet. I could see the lights of Denver spread out below me like a grid of gold. Somewhere down there, in that castle of light, the party was falling apart. Lucas was probably trying to spin it. Cora was probably telling everyone I was mentally unstable. It didn't matter what they said, because facts are louder than words. I sat on the hood of my car. The engine was still ticking, cooling down. I pulled out my phone. It was 9:15 p.m. I opened the text thread with Tara. I typed one word, execute. I pressed send. I sat there and watched the city. I imagined the data traveling through the invisible network. I imagined the emails landing in inboxes. Ping, the SEC whistleblower portal. Ping, the board of directors of Hawthorne Manufacturing. Ping, the forensic accounting firm that audited the bank. Ping, the local press. I had released it all. The folder contained everything. The shell company LJH Consulting. The invoices Lucas had forged. The wire transfers Cora had authorized for her personal shopping sprees. The tax returns Richard had falsified. And the photos. The time-stamped photos of Lucas at the Ritz-Carlton with Sarah, paid for with stolen company funds. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt clean. It was like lancing a boil. It was gross and it was painful, but the poison was finally out. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see the calls. I knew they would start coming within minutes. Lucas, Richard, the lawyers. I sat there for an hour, breathing in the mountain air. I cried for a few minutes. I cried for the girl from Pueblo who wanted so badly to be loved that she let herself be erased. I mourned her, and then I wiped my face. I got back in my car and drove to a hotel downtown. I checked in under my maiden name. The next morning, the world exploded. I woke up and turned on the TV. It was on the local news. Breaking news: fraud scandal rocks Hawthorne Manufacturing. They showed footage of police cars outside the Hawthorne offices. They showed Richard Hawthorne trying to cover his face with a jacket as he was escorted out. My phone, which I had turned back on, was frozen. Hundreds of missed calls. Voicemails from Lucas screaming, then crying, then begging. Jode, what did you do? They're freezing the accounts. Jode, pick up. We can fix this. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the end. We can't fix this, Lucas. You broke it. I met with a divorce lawyer that afternoon. I gave him the insurance folder. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, looking at the documents. This is a massacre, Mrs. Hawthorne. Miss Mendez, I corrected him. My name is Jode Mendez. Miss Mendez, he said. You won't just get a divorce. You're going to get everything. They can't fight this. If they go to court, they go to prison for 20 years. They will settle for whatever we ask. I don't want their money, I said. I don't want alimony. I don't want the house. I don't want anything that has the name Hawthorne on it. Then, what do you want? I want my initial investment back, I said. The money I put in to save the company 2 years ago, with interest. And I want them to sign a document admitting that I was the one who saved the business, not Luca's. That's it. That's it. I have my own money. I have my own business. I just want my truth back. The fallout lasted for 6 months. It was messy, but I was removed from it. I let the lawyers handle the noise. Luca's lost his job immediately. The board fired him for cause, embezzlement, and gross misconduct. Richard was forced to step down as chairman. Cora was humiliated socially. The charity boards she sat on asked her to resign. They avoided prison only because I agreed to a settlement where they paid back every cent they stole, plus penalties. It bankrupted them personally. They had to sell the estate. They had to sell the lake house. They had to sell the cars. Lucas's Porsche, repossessed, Cora's jewelry, auctioned. And me, I was busy. I leased a new office in Lodo for Nexus Advisory. It was a beautiful space, exposed brick, high ceilings, lots of light. No shadows. Word got out about what I had done. Not the messy divorce details, but the business details. The board of directors at Hawthorne Manufacturing actually reached out to me. They asked if I would come back as a consultant to help stabilize the company after the scandal. I declined. I don't fix the same problem twice, I told them, but other companies called. My client list doubled. I hired 10 more staff. I wasn't just the fixer anymore. I was the architect. I was building things that lasted. I heard rumors about Luca's. Denver is a small town. He tried to get another job in finance, but no one would touch him. His reputation was radioactive. The genius son was revealed to be a fraud who stole from his own family legacy. Sarah, the woman from the Ritz-Carlton, dumped him the day the news broke. Turns out she liked the expense account, not the man. 6 months after the party, I was walking to get coffee near my office. I passed a temp agency. I saw him. Lucas was sitting inside, near the window. He was wearing a suit that looked slightly too big for him now. He had lost weight. He was on the phone, holding a headset. He looked tired. He looked gray. He was working as a recruiter. An entry-level job, answering phones. I stopped for a second. He looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. He froze. He looked at me, standing there in my tailored coat, holding my coffee, looking healthy and strong. I saw regret in his eyes. I saw shame. He started to stand up, maybe to come outside, maybe to apologize. I didn't wait. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just kept walking. He was a chapter in my book. A painful chapter, but it was over. I had turned the page. I didn't expect to hear from any of them ever again. I had cut the cord completely. But one rainy Tuesday in November, my receptionist buzzed me. "Jode, there's a Zuri Hawthorne here to see you. She says she doesn't have an appointment, but it's urgent." I hesitated. Zuri, the flighty sister, the one whose engagement party had been the stage for my exit. "Send her in," I said. Zuri walked in. She looked different. She wasn't wearing the designer clothes I was used to. She was wearing jeans and a raincoat. She looked wet and miserable. She stood in the doorway of my office, looking around at the bustling activity, the awards on my shelf, the view of the city. "Wow," she said softly. "You built all this." "I did," I said. "Sit down, Zuri." She sat. She looked at her hands. "I'm sorry to just show up. I didn't know where else to go." "What's wrong?" "I called off the engagement," she said. I raised an eyebrow. I thought the wedding was next month. It was, but after everything happened with Lucas and Mom and Dad, Brad's family got weird. They wanted a prenup. They wanted to distance themselves, and I realized I was just a merger to them, just like I was to my parents. She looked up at me, and her eyes were filled with tears. "I saw what they did to you, Jode. I was there. I watched Mom take your chair away. I watched Lucas laugh." She took a shaky breath. "I didn't say anything. I just sat there. I'm so ashamed of that. I let them treat you like garbage because I was scared of them. I was scared of being the one they turned on." I softened. I knew that fear. I had lived in it. "You were protecting yourself, Zuri," I said. "Yeah, but look where it got me," she said bitterly. "My family is a ruin. My brother is a criminal. My parents are bitter, hateful people who just sit around blaming you for everything. They take no responsibility. They still think they're the victims." She looked at me earnestly. "I don't want to be like them, Jode. I want to be like you. You walked away. You built your own life. You have dignity. She reached into her bag. She pulled out a small box. I found this, she said, in Lucas's old desk when we were clearing out the house. She slid it across the desk. I opened it. It was my wedding ring, the one I had left on the plate. I thought maybe you'd want to sell it, Zuri said, or throw it in the river, or whatever, but it felt wrong for them to have it. I looked at the ring. It was just metal and stone. It held no power over me anymore. Thank you, Zuri, I said. I chose the wrong family, Zuri whispered. I want to choose the right one now. I know I'm still a Hawthorne, and I know you hate us, but can we be friends? Can I just know you? I looked at her. She was young, broken, and trying to find a way out of the maze just like I had. I don't hate you, Zuri, I said. And I don't hate the name Hawthorne. It's just a name. It's what you do with it that matters. I slid the ring box into my drawer. I'm going to get lunch, I said, standing up. Do you like Thai food? Zuri smiled, a real tentative smile. I love Thai food. Come on, I said. My treat. 2 years have passed since the party. Nexus Advisory is now the top crisis management firm in Colorado. I have 20 employees. I have a life that is full, quiet, and mine. I date sometimes, but I'm in no rush. I'm enjoying the peace. I'm enjoying the fact that when I come home, the only perfume in the air is the fresh lilies I buy for myself. I'm sitting in my office now. The sun is setting over the mountains, painting the sky in purple and gold. On the wall behind my desk, framed in a simple black matte box, hangs a cheap plastic badge. Jode, housekeeper. Clients ask me about it all the time. They expect a funny story or a motivational quote. I tell them the truth. That badge, I tell them, is the most valuable thing I own. Why, they ask. Because it was the moment I realized that if you spend your life trying to squeeze into a chair that isn't yours, you'll never stand on your own 2 feet. I look at that badge every day. It reminds me of what I survived. It reminds me of the woman I used to be, the pleaser, the fixer, the ghost. And it reminds me of the woman I am now. I didn't destroy Lucas. He destroyed himself. I just turned on the lights. I didn't steal Zuri. She saved herself. I just held the door open. I look directly at you now, the person reading this. Maybe you're sitting at a table where you don't feel welcome. Maybe you're fixing everyone else's life while yours is falling apart. Maybe you're making yourself small so someone else can feel big. Maybe you're holding onto a badge that someone else pinned on you. Take it off. Remove the ring. Leave the dinner. Walk out the door. It will be terrifying. The silence will be loud. The judgment will be heavy. But I promise you this, the air outside is sweet, the ground is solid, and the table you build for yourself, it will be the only seat you ever need. My name is Jode. I used to be a housekeeper in a house of lies. Now, I'm the owner of my own life, and I have never been freer.